Greetings and welcome. This is our second meeting number 2 for our 1010 class on the evening of May the 23rd. Let's have some general observations that will involve introductions to the class. So if you've got your course outline in front of you right now, there's a couple of things I want to point out right away. That course outline has kind of multiple things involved in it. First, there's kind of some introductory stuff. There's some general objectives about, kind of what we hope we accomplish in our time together, etc. Ultimately, the thing that matters in this course outline is that listing of the things at the very end. So let's take a look at that real quickly. Oh, there's one other thing I'll have you write down real quickly on that front page of that course outline. I identify that the phone number that I've provided with you is the 2412 number for the school, okay? And then the other thing I want to point out is that email address there. And I'm going to recommend on that email address that you stick with that timmymcgee@yahoo.com. Put a note to yourself this evening to just send me an email, random, like I'm here or something like that, just so we can all make sure that we have the ability to email each other, all right, and connect. So if I have, for example, any types of comments I need to make, I can send those to you. If you have any comments for me, that's the email that you want to send. It allows for me to know that I've got you there. So just send me an email if you can remember this evening at that timmymcgee@yahoo.com, just so I've got your your email address. All right, let's take a look now at the course outline particularly, or what we can call the meeting plans. Now, I should say to you that this class is designed as an introduction to the college university experience, okay? And I'll have more to say about that here in a little bit when we talk about the academic community. When you take a college class, and some of you have had already some college classes either through concurrent enrollment, or maybe you've taken another class outside, while you were in school or whatever. College classes will always have a course outline, okay? And that's kind of what you're looking at now. The course outline is always 2 parts. The general introduction to the class, objectives, overview, junk like that. And then the more important part is that listing of all of the work, the expectations, the deadlines, and all of that. Here in a bit, I'm going to talk about why that's so important in regards to what we call master scheduling, okay? It's really important that you realize that when you have multiple college classes, and we're a group that predominantly is getting ready to start our college careers, and we will recognize we've got multiple classes with multiple course outlines. We've got to find a way to get ready to do all of those different course outline expectations. We talk about it as multiple deadlines, right? So most college students, if you give them one job to do, they're pretty adept at doing that one job. So for example, if I say, by our next session, have this done, they're pretty good at that. But if I say, by the next session, have A done, the following session you're going to have B and C do, 3 weeks from now you're going to have E, F do, and then G is coming in 5 weeks out in the distance. That's what we mean by multiple deadlines, times 4 or 5 classes. That's called the university or college experience. Do you understand? Now, believe it or not, that's not that big of a deal if and only if you know how to read a course outline and you know how to create a master schedule. Okay? So we'll be talking a little bit about the course outline. You can notice that, for example, on mine, ostensibly, there's kind of 2 projects in general. One, the reading that you'll do. Dude, I thought this was like a writing course. Why would we be reading? Well, think of it this way. If you're going to play a sport, it probably makes sense that you watch the sport. Would you agree with me? I mean, most people who play basketball watch basketball. Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, we look at writing so that we can improve our own writing. When we're looking at writing, we call that reading. Okay, it's what we call models. We'll be using the Axelrod Cooper text. That's, by the way, what we will call it, just because that's the last name of the authors. Does that make sense? So we'll be using the Axelrod Cooper text. I'll have more to say about that here in a little bit as well. So we will follow that. So the first thing we do is we read. The second thing we do, obviously this won't shock you in a composition course, is we do some writing. Okay? Now that writing is of different kinds depending on where we are in our semester. And you can kind of see on our course outline, and as we kind of get into this, you'll see there's multiple assignments on that course outline. Okay? Mr. Rock, I'm sorry, do you need another one?
Mr. Staub took mine.
Oh, no worries. That's fine. I've got extras. So let's talk through now some of the ideas regarding organization. All right? So first of all, let's just talk about how to get organized. I'm going to go ahead and say it out loud. This class is designed specifically to help you prep for all of the college coursework that you will be taking. And one of the things you always want to make sure that you do is to show up with proper supplies. So let's make a quick list of the things I recommend that you possess when you show up to class. Okay? The first thing I recommend that you have with you is some kind of a 3-ring notebook. And here's why. I'm going to recommend that you are able to use our 3-hole punch and any kind of handouts that I give to you, any of the papers that you have. You're able to keep those organized in some kind of a notebook system, and here's why. We do a lot of work in a 10-10 class that gets you ready for other classes. The one that comes to mind immediately is what we call the 10-20 class. That's the literature course. So you got to take a writing course, you got to take a literature course for most programs. For some programs, not necessarily. It can be a different kind of second English class. Most degree plans will require that you have 2 classes of English, okay? So right away, we'll do some things in this class that will help you get ready for the second English class you have to take. But there's a lot of other classes as well where what we will cover in here will be beneficial. So for example, later in the session, we'll be talking about writing papers where there's proper attribution and citation. Dude, what is that? We'll get to it. We'll talk about it. But you'll have to do that kind of work, not only for this class, and not only for the next English class that you have to take. You'll have to do it for an anthropology class. You'll have to do it for a history class. You'll have to do it for a science class. Does that make sense? So having all of your notes from this class in some kind of notebook organizational system will allow for you to keep the notebook in your dorm room and reference it later. Along with that, obviously, I would recommend that you have some kind of college rule paper. It's not that I'm opposed to spiral notebook kinds of approaches. I'm just telling you that in terms of organization, it's a little bit easier to have loose leaf paper that moves in and out of that 3-ring notebook. So I recommend that you buy yourself some. For those of you who are about to leave and go on to the university campus or the college campus, the list we're making is one that I recommend that you kind of keep with you, and then you do a little back to school work before you go. Multiple notebooks is not a bad idea. So for each one of your classes, get yourself a 2-inch 3-ring notebook. You know, they sell them fairly cheap at like, you know, the Walmarts or whatever. And, you know, you can go that route, okay? Or you can just use your old ones from high school or whatever, too. You don't have to buy new ones, okay? You need writing utensils. You need a blue ink or a black ink pen. I would recommend 2 of each of these. You need a red ink pen. Again, I recommend a couple of them, just so that if in the middle of a project and you really need a pen, your ink goes out, you got a step back up. You always need a pencil, some kind of number 2 or mechanical pencil, because we'll often do, is just like other classes, we'll do Scantron-driven tests where you got to fill in the little stupid Scantron bubbles, and you can only do that with a pencil. Next, and this is a big one, and I put a star next to it, you need some kind of a daily planner. Student planner, date book, however you want to think of it. Now, for those of you who are coming out of high school, you know that, of course, we had the student planner that they gave to you every year. And that's kind of like a remedial type of day planner that's made specifically for high school students. It's usually not big enough for a college student who is taking a full load of academic coursework. So I recommend that you kind of take a look, either online or at the store or whatever, and get you a day planner that works well for you, that has enough room so that you can take, for example, all of, see, here's the thing, if you were college sophomores right now, when you showed up right now, you would actually have the day planner in front of you open, and all of the deadlines from the course outline would already be written into your day planner. If you were a sophomore, if you're a junior. Got me? What's so special about sophomores and juniors? Well, they've done these classes. And so they're already aware that if they can get a hold of the course outline, they've already put all of the dates and the stuff from the course outline into their day planner. We'll have more to say about this here in a little bit when we talk about master scheduling. But that's kind of an important part of it. All right. And then finally, I recommend that you have some kind of a flash drive, something that you can hold on to all of your stuff, all of your papers. Even if you're typing on a hard drive, I still always recommend that you do some kind of backup with a floppy, with a disk drive of some kind, and then take good care of that you don't lose it. Papers sometimes can be saved and then be beneficial down the line for any number of reasons. There's some other things, a dictionary, some kind of handheld device that allows you with spelling if you have problems, some things like that. I also recommend a volume that I recommend that you take a look at on Amazon.com. You can get this very cheap and get it used. This is called Strunk and White, is the title, the author's title, the author's names. And it's called Elements of Style. Now again, you can get this thing for under $5. It's a very, very useful volume. It's a little tiny volume. It's called Elements of Style. And for those of you who grew up as children with the children's book Charlotte's Web, about that spider and that little pig who are pals and all of that, if you remember that story at all from your childhood, that story was written by a cat named E.B. White. White was a major essayist, and he, along with a guy named Strunk, put together Elements of Style, the fundamental rules of writing. And I can't recommend a better single volume. It's a little tiny book that I'm going to recommend that you read and kind of hold on to for much of the first 2 years of your college career. Ultimately, you'll end up memorizing most of the rules. It's a little thin book. It's a little tiny volume. It's not more than 40 pages long with big letters, okay? But it's extremely useful in terms of the basic rules about writing, okay? So I recommend that maybe be part of your supplies as well. Do you have any questions for me about supply stuff? Okay, the next thing we got to talk about now is how we hand stuff in. All right? So every session, you're going to arrive with some work done. You're going to hand that work in to me. Okay? You'll leave after we do a session. You'll leave. You'll come back the next session, right? So we're meeting every Tuesday, Thursday for the month of June. When you come back, I then will give you back the packets that you gave to me with a score on those packets, somewhere between a 0 and a 100. Does that make sense? Okay? So those packets that you give to me always have a cover sheet. Okay? So we're going to outline that now. Okay? What does that cover sheet look like? Now this is fairly standard protocol for college coursework, where you want to be very organized, and it's good for record keeping. So what we are going to do is all the work that you're going to do for me, I will always outline with you. That work will be put in a packet in a special order, and the order is listed on the first page, what we call the cover page. You can kind of think of the cover page as like a table of contents for your packet. Make sense? So in other words, whatever you're going to have inside of the packet, you're going to basically just list it there. The cover sheet will have two things. One, first it's going to have your personal information. So it's going to have your first and last name. It's always going to have the meeting number, just like that correlates with our course outline, right? Meeting 2 is tonight, next time meeting 3, etc. It's always going to have the date when the meeting will occur, okay? So now, I'm not talking about the date you did the work. I'm talking about the day the meeting will occur. So for example, this evening would be May the 23rd, etc., right? Make sense? Sometimes it can be all right. I'm only lecturing the one course this summer, but you can kind of just start to do it to put my name there as well and the name of the class. This is what we call 10-10-60, or just for short 10-10. Okay? And one of the reasons why we do this as a convenience to the prof is that if the prof is lecturing multiple classes of any kind, it allows for the prof to then know exactly where it comes from. Now that's the first thing, personal intel. The second thing will be the work, what we will simply call the assignments that are due, all right, with a colon, okay? And all you're going to do is just going to list those assignments in order, and the way that you list them will be the order they appear in the packet. Make sense? And then the cover sheet will appear as the very first thing, and then it's always stapled. I'll always have staplers here for you as you get ready to hand in your packets. Okay? On the assignments due section, then, you're just simply listing, okay? So you can list it, you can number it or bullet point it or however you want to do it, okay? And then there will be an assignment there, I don't know, chapter, like for example this evening, chapter 1, right? Remember I said do the notes of chapter 1. So you would write down chapter 1, colon, and then you're going to write one of two words. You're either going to write the word complete, which I would recommend most of the time, that is what you write. In other words, you did it. Or you're going to write incomplete, and then afterwards, maybe in parentheses, you're going to explain why. So for example, there may be parts of the packet that you're able to complete, but other parts of the packet that you can't complete. And you want to be sure to explain kind of maybe why that's the case. Does that make sense? So you're kind of like, okay, I was unable to get this done, you know, because I ran into a problem, whatever, computer issues, whatever. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's your cover sheet. Recommendation here is that you create some kind of template and then you just change it for every session. It makes it easy. All right? Any questions about our cover page stuff? All right, well then, since we're here, let's go ahead and make one. Tonight's cover sheet, you know, unless you already did this because you knew about, you know, what you were doing, is going to be handwritten, okay? So you're just going to handwrite a cover sheet for tonight. This will be your very first one, okay? And we always do a couple of things at the beginning of our session. We always review the packet for that evening to make sure your cover sheet's complete. And then I also always review the next meeting's cover sheet. Make sense? So that we always kind of, oh yeah, that's the things that are coming due. So let's do that together right now. You may want to have, you know, 2 sheets of paper out. One of them is going to be the cover sheet you're creating right now for meeting 2. And then the second will be the meeting 3 cover sheet to get you ready for our next session. Got me? All right, let's talk about it. Meeting 2 cover sheet. So go ahead and put your personal intel there, your first and last name. Of course, this is for meeting 2, right? And what a lot of students will do is they put that right in the center at the top of the page and then they center it, especially when you type it, okay? However you want to do it. I really don't care as long as I can read the information, all right? Definitely meeting number 2. Definitely tonight's date, May the 23rd, right? Yeah. Sometimes I'll have the date on the board, but a lot of times I won't because I know I'm going to need my board, all right? And this is what? Northwest NWCC class 1010. And, of course, you can always just put there McGee if you want. All right? Now, we're going to write our words, assignments due. Skip a few lines down. Assignments due. And tonight we don't have much, do we? We've got chapter 1. Now we understand that by chapter 1 we mean Axelrod and Cooper chapter 1. And I mean, if you want to be really thorough about it, you can say Axelrod and Cooper chapter 1. Or A and C chapter 1. But if you say chapter 1, I'm going to know that that means Axelrod and Cooper because we only have the single text for our class, okay? Chapter 1 notes. And you can even specify that this is bullet point notes with a capital B, capital P in parentheses. And that tells me it's code language that this is bullet point notes for us. And that's all you had to do for chapter 1 was just to read it and take a few notes, okay? Two, this evening we're going to watch a lecture. We got to watch several of these. And we'll abbreviate it as TC, short for teaching company, lecture number 1. Okay? And you're going to flow that lecture, all right? Number 3. We're going to do a little writing diagnostic tonight, and you can abbreviate this for writing dio, D-I-O. And this is just like a real brief paragraph or two that you're going to write for me, where you're going to answer the question or the observation. 3 things I hope to gain or learn from this class. 3 things I hope to gain or learn from this class. All right? And here at the end of the hour, you're going to put that as the very last thing in your packet. So what will your packet assume? Well, it's going to have your cover sheet, won't it? Followed by your Chapter 1 notes. Followed by your lecture notes, okay, of the flowed lecture. Followed finally by your writing diagnostic that you will write at the end of the hour, at the end of the session. Okay? Our goal is to be out of here sometime before 9:30, depending, right? Remember, though, we are in our second meeting, correct? And because of our senior situation, we weren't able to meet in our first meeting, correct? Right? So our session tonight will go a little bit longer, maybe, because of that. All right, any questions about that? Okay, let's set that aside, and now we'll go to meeting number 3, cover sheet review. So now this is for next week. This is meeting number 3, May the 28th. Meeting number 3, May the 28th. Okay? Now, just to make sure you kind of understand what's up, go ahead and look real quickly at your course outline. And if you look at the course syllabus, you'll see that there under May 28th, meeting 3, there's a number of things listed there. Do you see them all? Okay, those are all listed for you. And what I then do is I kind of itemize that work for you, and I'm going to do that right now. And so what you write down will be what you type up. Now, this is important that you hear what I'm saying. Your cover sheets from next session on will all be typed documents, okay? Typed documents. So you'll type your cover page always, all right? Now, sometimes you'll have to type work for me. A lot of times you can handwrite work for me. If you handwrite work for me, most of the time you're working with blue or black ink, not pencil and not red ink, blue or black ink, okay? Dude, I just wrote my cover sheet in pencil. That's okay. Because I hadn't told you yet, right? I hadn't told you yet. All right, here we go. This is the work for meeting number 3. And you're going to work in this order. So underneath assignments due, this is how it's going to list. Chapter 2 notes. Bullet point notes, BP, bullet point notes. Chapter 12 notes. So you can see I'm reading right off your course outline too, aren't I? Right? Grammar handbook, S and G notes. Now, grab your book for just a second so you know what I'm talking about here. Do you see how your book, if you look at it the way I'm looking at my book right now, you see that there's different colored pages when you hold it like this. Do you see that? When you hold this book up like this, you can see those different colored pages, right? Do you see at the end those kind of, what, I don't know, Struck, what do you call it? Peach colored pages are? Do you see what I'm talking about? There are peach colored pages. Open your book and find those pages real quick. Okay? You go to basically page 851 in your book. Do you see it? And then you turn, and do you see where it says handbook on the next page? But notice that there's no page numbers for these, like in the same way. Like, for example, it doesn't say 852, 853. Do you see that? Instead, what you're looking at is a grammar handbook. And what I'm going to have you do is just read through this and take notes. Now, if this is intel you already know, you're going to fly through it. If it's intel that's brand new to you, like, whoa, dude, I never even heard of some of this stuff, you're going to slow down and take some really good notes. Try and learn some of this stuff. Does that make sense? As we're getting ready for some of the scores that have to happen for us at the end of our semester, all right, in terms of grammar study and the like. You can see on the very first page of this handbook where it says handbook contents, do you see that? That you have different chapters designated by letters. Do you see that? S, G, E, W, P, and so on. Do you see it? So what I'm assigning for next session is your grammar notes from the GH Grammar Handbook, and that's the nomenclature we often will use, is just simply GH. The Grammar Handbook, S, section S, and G. Now you can see from the handbook contents that S has S1, S2, S3. Do you see it? And then G has G1 through G7. And so you want to take your notes accordingly. Does that make sense? And so if you'll turn a couple of pages on H5, you'll see there H5, H6. We're just doing stuff about S from chapter S, right? Got me? All right. And all you're doing is reading through this. And again, if this is brand new information to you, then you want to make sure and slow down. If you really don't understand what you're looking at, you want to go to places like YouTube to try and pick up some tutorials to help you, to get some extra information, to try and make sure you understand these concepts, all right? All right, so that's the next thing. All right, the next thing you're going to list there is your TC. We'll just use that nomenclature from here on. Teaching company, flowed lectures 2 and 3. This will mean you won't staple your packet together until the very end of the session, right? Does that make sense? Because this work you're doing in class, not out of class. You understand? Finally, you're going to have a Chapter 2 paper. Chapter 2 paper. Now your Chapter 1 notes, your Chapter 12 notes, your grammar handbook stuff, and your teaching company lecture notes, all of that stuff is handwritten stuff. Hi, please, Ms. Rodriguez, have a seat. All of that is is handwritten. But when you get to the Chapter 2 paper, you are working with a typed document. Got me? So that's the one thing out of your packet that I will look at as typed. Okay? Ms. Rodriguez, we're just kind of covering our cover sheet for meeting 3 of next Thursday. Tuesday. I'm videotaping so that any of the information that you missed you can watch on Learn Strong as well. Okay. Now let's talk about this Chapter 2 paper, and let's talk about how to look at our textbook, shall we? So you've already looked at Chapter 1. You're handing those notes in tonight. Now let's go to Chapter 2. By the way, let's start on our table of contents really quickly on Roman numeral 35. That's XXXV. Roman numeral 35. And I want to make a suggestion to you. For many, many years when I lectured this course, I used Mortimer Adler's classic How to Read a Book, where he made the argument that you got to learn how to read if you're going to be a college student. And one of the ways you learn how to read is to know how to read a table of contents. So early on, anytime you get a book in college, and you know I'm allowing you to use this one. Normally, if you bought this book, it would be upwards of $120, okay? So at a bookstore or whatever. And see, you're going to have to buy all your books when you go to college, right? One of the first things you want to do when you sit down with your course outline in the book is you want to open and look at the table of contents. For example, is the instructor going to make me work through an entire book or only going to make me work through a couple of chapters of a book? I just had a conversation with a college student at another university, and she told me that the prof made her buy 5 books for the class, each one of those books averaging at about $75 a book. But then the prof only used from each one of those books 10 pages of information. The rest of the book wasn't even addressed. Got me? So several students dropped out of the class when they saw 5 books were required for the class. They're like, oh, there's no way I can read that much. Well, when taken collectively, though, the number of pages actually read out of the books was minuscule. Of course, if the student was smart, she would have waited, not bought the book until she got her course outline, realized that she was only reading a few pages out of a $75 book, borrowed the book from a colleague who bought the book, made copies, and then not have to buy the book. See, right? Are you understanding? A way to be economically conservative in your textbook acquisition. Our class, notice, using our course outline, our class now will follow the Axelrod Cooper text 1 chapter per session. You got me? So for example, notice, next session will be in chapter 2, where we have writing activities. The first one is called Remembering an Event. Chapter 3, you can flip the page, writing profiles. Chapter 4, explaining a concept. 5, explaining opposing positions. 6, arguing a position. 7, solution. 8, justifying an evaluation. 9, speculating about causes. And 10, interpreting a story. Are you ready for this? We will write then 9 papers this class. Does that make sense? Those 9 papers are the 9 chapters we just looked at. We don't count chapter 1 because there wasn't a paper, right? So chapters 2 through 10 are our papers. These are writing assignments. Okay? For each chapter of Axelrod Cooper, you're introduced to a type of essay. They will introduce you to the essay, then they will ask you to write a similar essay. Does that make sense? Let's study how, and this is not unusual, let's study how the textbook chapters are fairly predictably set up. So let's go now, by the way, just since you're there, chapter 2, you will read all this other stuff, but this is more like just helpful material when we're talking about a writing course. So chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, all of that stuff is just information to help you tools for writing. This book's predominant use is in chapters 2 through 10. Every session, you only have to look at one chapter. Now notice that we said on our next session, we not only assign chapter 2, but also what? See, and if you look real quickly at your table of contents there on right, you can see that the chapter 12 is called a catalog of reading strategies. So it won't shock you to maybe hear that next session I'm going to talk about reading and annotation. Okay, it's fairly predictable. Okay? Any questions to this point? Let's now turn to chapter 2 and identify the way in which chapter 2 is marked at the top of the page. Do you see it? I'm teaching you how to read to some degree this textbook already. Do you see it? Chapter 2, top of the page. I'm with you now on page 16, 17, aren't I? Notice that the chapters are set up the same way every time, chapters 2 through 10. First, on page 16, 17, introduction to the type of paper. This type of paper is what we call a reflective essay, remembering an event. Turn the page. They're going to finish on 18, and then something interesting happens on 19. 19 starts with what they call readings. These are the models. Okay? So in other words, you're going to learn how to write an essay called a reflective essay or remembering an event. Then they're going to give you some examples of this kind of essay, starting on page 19 and 20 and 21. Then we have a second essay starting at the bottom of 21 to 22, 23, and 24. So you got 2 models. Do you see that? 2 models. Then on 25, they start to kind of explain why the models are important, what you were supposed to learn from the model. Got me? And they give you some ideas on 25, 26, 27, 28. On 28, I hope you're turning with me so you can see this. On 28, and then on to 29 then, we've got another model. That makes how many thus far? We're to the 3rd model, all remembering an event. Do you got me? And then you'll read the 3rd model on 29 and 30 with more follow-up comments on 31, 32, 33. Look on 33. We have a 4th model. Your textbook will do this in every chapter to give you a clear understanding of what this essay looks like. 34, 35, 36, it ends. On 36, 37, and 38, a little bit, again, more clarification about the model. Then turn the page. Starting on page 40. We're still in chapter 2. Starting on page 40.